Right. Well, so welcome to today's episode of the Strategy Lab podcast. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are AI Jules and we specialize
Good
in
morning.
helping companies scale their business and revenue and see how AI is reshaping the industries and accelerating innovation. So if you'd like to learn more about how to take your business to the next level, make sure you stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs. I am your host, Hardeep, today, and we have a very exciting guest for you, Michael Hosea, the CEO from Premier Partner Consulting. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Honored and glad to be here.
And where are you talking to us from today, Michael?
Today, I am actually talking to you from Southern California, specifically in one of the properties in Riverside, California.
Okay, brilliant. Well, Michael, tell us a bit about your background and the journey that led you to Premier Partner Consulting and any pivotal moments or experiences that shaped your career.
Yeah, sure. I have quite a bit I could share in that area. I will say, from a core standpoint, without the career and the job and the businesses and so forth, I grew up in an impoverished environment. So was always motivated to do more and kind of get out of that environment, just like I know quite a few others are. So that's my primary background, along with sports, lots of sports. Right, grew up with seven brothers, super competitive. Play sports all the way, up until college for a little bit there. So always striving to kind of better myself and better the people around me, and super competitive, but right in a good way. Right, in a way that's good sportsmanship, right? If you beat me at something, right, I'm going to come to you and say, hey, man, that was great. Show me how to do X, right? I am super humble, right? And I'm always willing to learn. And I do always learn from all the individuals that I encounter. So my background, right, primarily, I'm a business major, right, with a minor in psychology. I really wanted to focus on sports, to be perfectly honest. I wanted to be an NBA basketball player. I thought I was really good at it. And fortunately for me, that's what got me into college and got me into business, right? Another avenue. So my background is primarily with tax, which is I worked for the IRS for 7 years. And so I worked not only on the individual tax side, 1040s, I also worked on the business tax side, along with corporate tax, right? So I'm very familiar with the entire range of different tax types and, tax laws, I would say at that 1,000-foot level. I also worked at IBM for 3 years, spending time there doing some research and development on the various, what were they called? Memory cards, hard drives, literally building out, computers back in the day, RTs, XTs. And so I got that technology background. And then from there, I also got the opportunity to work for a company known as ADP, which is probably the largest payroll processor in the world. I worked there for 25 years. I picked up and learned, right, quite a few of the things that I've now added to, right, my business value proposition. I got the opportunity to expand on my tax background at the IRS, because obviously ADP is the largest tax payroll company in the world. So I was able to take that and then parlay that into part of my business. So we have a tax division. I was also working in business development as well as into software development as well as cybersecurity. I don't mean I worked in these areas. I was the executive director over these areas. So I got to kind of, dabble quite a bit across the entire gamut. I had a sales support team, right? So we worked very closely with sales. So I got the opportunity to see a business model from end to end, from the sales cycle all the way to, right, when we offloaded, right, or moved that client on. Or the same thing with software. Okay. So I was able to take a ton of experience during my tenure at ADP as an executive that we were super successful. Okay. We grew all of our product portfolios 10 to 15% year over year. We hit our goal of $1 billion in revenue 3 years ahead of schedule. Right. And so I was able to take that along with my own confidence and start my own business. Right. I started my first business with my wife back in early 92, which was real estate. And so real estate, if you don't know, is really our bread and butter, right? I collect rents every month, right? We sometimes sell properties and make a decent amount of money on that. And then we reinvest that into real estate. And that's, right, recurring revenue year over year. And most of our properties are in Southern California, which California properties are a gold mine. If you want to do your research, you'll see the appreciation rate in Southern California is out the roof, okay? And at one point, I believe we had about 9 properties, right, just in Southern California. We also have properties in Austin. Again, we sell them off and we buy more. We haven't been doing much of that lately. So we started that along with my wife way back in, again, early 90s. That was the first business. Now, to be honest, me and some of my friends, we've been entrepreneurs all our life. We failed a few businesses before when we were still in our teens. But at least, we've always had this knack to want to have our own business. And I would advise you to start your own business. One of the things that we also offer is business development. So I got the opportunity to work as an executive, not only developing product, but developing businesses, right? I.e., top line revenue, right? Bottom line business expense, right? Finding the right and most talented, right, individuals to run the various product lines and the various business lines for us, which is a key. And so I'm able to then take that and what we've been able to do under Premier Partners, which is my last business that I started in 2018, is help over about 40 different people start their own business. The reason I say that, when you look at the current ecosystem, you're either going to be working for someone for 30, 35 years or whatever, or maybe multiple companies, right? Which is what's happening more so today. But at the end of the day, you're working for someone, right? They're only going to pay you what they think you're worth, not what you're actually worth. And I can assure you that my worth was much more at every position that I've had than what they actually paid me. You just don't realize it at the time because of the way the system works, right? But at a minimum, I would say start a hobby that you have passion about, right? That you would like to run as a business later on in life, which is what I've done. Okay, so I started the first business, which is community services management, and then Hosier Property Management in the early 90s. Community services management came in on the back of that. I got connected with my stepmom, who was a fellow in Washington, D.C. And when she came out of her fellowship after 3 years, she started her own business. And her business was to help, right, poor people. So, right, primarily kids, impoverished kids between the ages of 0 to 5. In America, they call that the Head Start and early Head Start programs. And so I'm a Head Start kid. I'm a product of Head Start. And so, although she had a really good business, good revenue line, the business wasn't being ran properly. So I literally stepped in to help her manage that business, right? Get it organized, right? We did cost containment, make sure we got all of our expenses in line, make sure that all of the appropriate salaries that were being paid were in line with the market, et cetera. And then from that, I actually did a shoot off or a spinoff of community services management, whereby I would handle all of this company's name is organizational learning. I'd handle all of their all the contract negotiations, and then literally manage the entire project, right, from end to end. That including securing grants, that including doing community needs assessments to determine what the demographic breakdown is of a specific area that you want to target that are missing these services. So again, we really focused on kids, impoverished kids between the ages of 0 to 5, which is Head Start and early Head Start. And we were successfully able to get, on average about $1 million for these programs year over year. And organizational learning was doing this at an 85% success rate. Okay, so I just branched off with that business, which is really exciting. In addition to branching off that business, we actually developed our own software and copyrighted it. It's called Demographic Data Bureau and Training Tracker. We use some of my friends that are in India, right? They were Java developers to develop this code. We copyrighted the code, and we were in the process of piloting it with Volunteers of America and CCFS out of Pasadena. When the real estate market just went, we made a ton of money off real estate, I would say. And so it became easier to spend more time on the real estate side of the house than trying to pump the software and managing those projects. Although it was lucrative, it was labor intensive, right? And so what you always want to do is try to have something where it's not labor intensive, but you're constantly, producing the right amount of revenue, and you're constantly growing. And that also allows you to reduce expense. So this is what AI does, right? Which is, another area that we've actually embarked on. And I have a really strong team of AI developers. When I say a strong team, community services management, right, which is where we help to secure funding for, impoverished kids, but also adult literacy, also affordable housing for the elderly. Also, we help tons of veterans, right? Help them find housing, help them find jobs, right? That type of thing. And so, although we were for profit, right, we help these nonprofits, right, to secure that funding and secure the resource to be able to do that. And then when I retired early from ADP, again, after 25 years, while at ADP, again, we were very successful in our organization. I had a great time, really a people person. My client support were Fortune 500. So Walmart was one of my clients, right? Apple Wells Fargo. And so I got an opportunity to not only, meet with them at the product level, but also meet with their senior leaders at strategic level to see where they want to take their business, where they wanted to take the products that we were actually providing for them. So I got a really good feel for the various, and that includes Apple and Oracle, and I can go on, right? I think ADP owns 40% of the Fortune 500 companies. ADP has about 800,000 clients, okay, companies on their service. And so it's massive. And again, I also ran cybersecurity, which we offer a little bit of that as well. And we've got some really good ideas of how we could avert some of the identity theft or some of the scams that they're using around with, with worms and with spyware, how they're taking over different platforms and then blackmailing the owners, right, to pay them in crypto, right, to release their their code in or their systems. So imagine that. We're dealing with ADP with 700,000 clients. Say on average, they average about maybe 10,000 employees. So imagine the identity theft opportunities there and some of the breaches that we saw, and we're able to take care of effectively. So I was also able to take that and we add that as part of our portfolio as well. Another thing that we were very successful at that I learned was at ADP, which is business process outsourcing, right? There's a couple of divisions where literally I don't bring on an entire staff of people. This is Premier Partners' entire model. I have identified very talented people, right? That some entrepreneurs, some are just moonlighting. But these talented people, I know their character, I know their integrity, I know their work, I know the quality of their work, right? And so when I find a particular job, let's say software development, I've got some of the best software developers, I would say, and I want to say in the world because it's worldwide. It's not just here in the US that I partnered with, right? Whether it's business development, we focus heavily on finance, financial services, simple stuff like life insurance, right? We tell people how to better manage their 401k in order to move our services down to a lower level. I want to say a lower level. That doesn't sound right. To a group of folks that are unbanked or underbanked or basically fall outside of the stock market. We have a brokerage division, right? Where we literally go in and we'll teach a barber or a truck driver, and we've already done this, right? How to buy, sell, right? Research, do stocks, limits, right? The basics on how to buy and sell stocks so they can get in the market as well. And we explain to them that there's a lot of acronyms, there's NASDAQ, there's SP. I mean, there's all these acronyms, but really it's more so about your common sense, right? I mean, if I said to you, do you think Apple is a good buy? Without doing any research. If you said no, I would say you're crazy, right? Because Apple is, right? It's one of the most highly evaluated companies in the world, and it has been for some time. And so you have to look at it long term, year over year. I'm not saying there aren't some risky, right, buys out there, but if you keep it simple, you can do quite well. So we're really proud of being able to do that, to allow people that are not in the game, that are maybe entrepreneurs, right, or they work for themselves. You got to have a retirement. You need to be able to buy stocks just like companies offer without the restrictions that company offers to you and your 401k, right? You can only buy what's in the portfolio of that third party of the 401k that your company's in cahoots with. Whereas with your own portfolio, you can buy whatever you want, right? You're not restricted. So, we offer that as part of community services management. What I did, by overlapping Premier Partners on top of community services management and wholesale property management was basically create a branding and marketing arm for those businesses, right? As well as expanding our consulting offering. And so, we overlaid that. And so whether the work comes in through Premier Partners or through community services management, right? All the marketing and branding and how we communicate to the public is primarily through Premier Partners. Speaking of marketing and branding, we have a marketing and branding arm as well. We develop websites, we develop logos, we help you develop the vision statements, mission statements, you name it. Right? Look, feel, same look and feel. If you go look at my website, my inspiration, right, is basically the sun setting over the ocean. That inspires me. And so when I'm sitting with my branding and marketing guys, that's what they're asking me. Well, what really inspired you, Mike, when you want to come up with a logo? Of course, I want to come up with a basketball, but that's too simple, right? So, they help to allow you to kind of open your mind to why and to what you want that logo to represent. And so, we have a really strong branding and marketing arm as well. I would say, we try to offer services that are synergized, right? That overlap. And so for us, right, we want to offer you multiple products, right? Whether it's under finance, whether we pull it to you under tax, very similar to what I did, right? And in the corporate world. Let me give you tax, and then I can talk to you about business development, right? Then I can talk to you more about, financial services. And so like I think we have about 80, 85 tax clients that we brought on board within the last 3 years. About 30% of those clients also are business development clients, right? Which means we help them start their business. We continue to help them with their growth strategy, with their strat plans. We continue to help them with trying to figure out ways to reduce expense, right? Obviously with contacting the vendors and always talking about, better rates, especially if you've been on for a long time. So about 30% of those guys on business development, about 20% of those guys are also on the brokerage services that I just mentioned. And we're growing those at a hefty rate. And our biggest growth item, again, continues to be in real estate. Although the interest rates are high, guess what else has gone up? Rent, right? So literally, I do hear a lot of stories about not buying real estate. Because I do know there are I won't say some pitfalls, but there's some weird stuff about, how the U.S. allows banks to make so much money off these properties. But if you play it right, you can make tons of money off these properties as well. And so that's what we do there. And then we tie all that back to a couple of, I'll call them methodologies and disciplines that we, not only like to work by, but to live by. And one is ProTactful, which is a methodology and a discipline that we're going to be publishing, hopefully, some ebooks, right, to the general public for the first time within the next couple of months. And ProTactful is all about when at work, or this will work in life as well, but definitely in a work environment, being professional at all times, right? Being respectful at all times, right? Being objective at all times, right? And when needed, being tactful in terms of how you deliver, right, messaging. And that's super important for not only de-stressing yourself, but de-stressing the people that you're working with. And we talk about, imagine an environment where all your meetings, everybody is professional, respectful, and objective, right? No matter what encounter you have. That we think that creates a more of a stress-free environment, which then help you to go home and spend more quality time with your family. And that part we call lifing, right? Not living. Living's that day-to-day grind, right? I got a paycheck, I got to pay bills, my kids got to go to soccer, that kind of thing. No, lifing, right? Finding a place, a sanctuary where you can really meditate, where you can think about what you not only want to do with your life, but with your career. It's hard to do that with all the noise, right? And so, I put out tons of videos about lifing, the things that where I find and deem to be my sanctuary. And so between those two things, right, that's really what we push with all of our premium business partners. And what you'll notice it's all about positivity, right?
What type of businesses are they? Are these in any particular sector, or on what size of businesses are they? From
Oh no,
startups to
this is universal. I've worked for small businesses. I worked for very large business. Again, I worked for IBM. I worked for the Internal Revenue. I think they own 100,000 employees. I worked for ADP. They got 60, 70,000 employees. I also worked for Raytheon before it was Raytheon. It used to be known as United Technologies, which is, I would say, mid-size. But in any scenario in business, I need to be professional with whoever I'm engaged. It is
can
not
you
only
share
was I,
examples?
yeah, yeah. A perfect example would be, um, let's say I'm running a project team. I used to be a project manager, obviously. And in that scenario, the people don't report to you, right? A lot of times you have to utilize your influence in order to get people to work on your project and or your task. And so, in any scenario, you're not a direct report, right? I have to influence you. If I treat you with disrespect, if I'm unprofessional to you, not only could you go to HR, obviously, right? But you're not going to be a good team member, right? If I'm not objective and I just come in and say, no, this is the way it is, I don't care what the numbers say, right? That. And so on a project, when you don't have that, but I would take the same, right? For when I have direct reports, everybody wants to be treated with respect and everybody wants to be treated professionally every day, all day, right? It is the job of a leader to do that, period. If he wants to be a good leader, right? Don't lead by fear, right? Don't lead
So
by
this
fear.
coaching, is this a coaching service that you sell to your clients, or is this something that's part of the
Yeah,
package when they?
absolutely. We offer executive development and coaching as well, and leadership coaching, right? Which includes your PDP, your personal development plans, right? Your career development plans. Where are you? Where do you want to go? What steps do you need to take? putting a plan together, right? Going through and checking off on each of those tasks as you execute those tasks, making sure that you're then reaching the goal that, you have preordained to be on your PDP. Absolutely. And I spent a lot of time coaching not only my own, executives, but I was mentored by our CTO at ADP. It's a guy named Mike Capone, who's a CEO, I think, now for QuickLooks. I was mentored by our CFO, who was my guy. His name was John Sigmund at ADP. And I can go on, right, with C-level mentorships that I received, along with SVPs and GMs. And so in order to develop our coaching strategy, specifically mine, is because I've been through a lot of it myself. And what I learned is not only the pro-tactful part, again, right? I can't coach you if I'm not going to be respectful. Can't coach you if I'm not professional. Kind of hard to coach you if I'm not objective, right? But outside of that, what you find is as a mentee or as a mentor, I learned tons from my mentee as much as I'm sure they learn from me as a mentor. And so it's always important, right, to take advantage of that. It's always important, right, to tap into people that you deem to be strong leaders, right, or whatever industry or whatever skill set you're specifically trying to find out or learn about. But so it's easy for me to coach, right? I mean, the structure's already there. Where are you? You're a manager. Well, where do you want to go to? I want to be a director. Well, what steps do we need to take? Okay. And then what are your weaknesses and what are your strengths? Right. Are you doing any 360s? Is there anybody else in your organization giving you feedback on what you need to do and where you need to go? Right. HR, obviously. So no, heavily coaching. I do most of that myself. And so I only have about 4 clients, right, that we do, executive coaching for. It's an area that we want to grow. I get tons of inquiries about people wanting to work with us on providing coaching, but we can't scale with that at this point.
And what's
Any
the
other
biggest
questions?
challenge or bottlenecks you're facing?
I'm sorry, one more time.
What are the biggest challenges or bottlenecks that you're facing in the business?
I think the biggest challenge right now is just the changing ecosystem, the changing environment, right? All of the stuff with AI, obviously, right? People want to figure out, okay, what platform do I use, right? How effectively will it be for me? Fortunately, I have a group of guys that are working on that for us. And like one of my guys who's a premier partner is one of the top AI executives for a major financial institution that I can't tell you about right now. But that's probably the biggest challenge you see trying to do that shift, right? But for a small company like mine or small businesses like mine, it's not as much of a problem. I think the other piece is, right, having the appropriate pipeline, making sure that I have, a healthy pipeline at all times with prospects that are looking to come on board or prospects that are potentials. And so we maintain that. Not so much. We do have, quite a bit coming in through social media, but it's more by word of mouth, to be perfectly honest, right? Existing clients tell other guys or other small businesses about us, which is our focus, is small business, right? Small, not very many, even mid-sized, mostly small businesses. And so that's how we create our pipeline. But when we need to scale, so we're going to need to grow that. And so scaling is going to be probably the biggest challenge for us because the business is there. If we want to go after it, right? Whether it's the coaching, like I just mentioned, whether it's the brokerage. I mean, we have several clients where we're providing full service. We literally have access, right, to their account, joint access, where we go in and make trades on their behalf, right? And so that's another offering. Instead of me just showing you, for $600 how to do all these things, well, guess what? I can have monthly and recurring revenue, just like I do have for the business development team. My challenge to scale is really finding talent, right? Talented, reliable, right? Business partners. Again, premier business partners, right? Again, the ones that we have, I think there's about 30. I have worked with these folks personally. Either if it's in real estate, they've done some work on my house or they built some stuff for me, right? If it's in business development, they've worked with me in a variety of ways in corporate America, doing business development to the tune of, tens of millions of dollars in terms of like revenue and expense reduction. We also do BPI, which you may be familiar with that. I've got business partners who do business process improvements, which I think is going to start to go away now with AI, right? You don't need that as much. Same with software development. You're not going to need that as much either. So you can see a couple of industries that are going to start to trend downward in terms of its need because AI is going to start to fill that gap. But the biggest challenge is finding talented people, right, that are also responsible. Those two are not are not always mutually exclusive, right? Depending on the age sometimes,
Yeah.
right? And so, and nobody really wants to, sorry about that. The biggest challenge, and you'll see that in quite a few of my videos when I'm talking about being protactful, right? The biggest challenge in work is the people that you work with. Sorry about that.
Right, don't worry. I'll edit it out.
Okay. Yeah. The biggest challenge is, you know, and I had this in corporate America as well, but the biggest challenge is finding the most talented people, you know, with the right amount of passion, right? That are committed, that have, you know, mind share, right? With, you know, our organization and what we're trying to do, not only with our business, but we're big on community service, right? Part of lifing, one of the biggest part of lifing is generosity. You'll see, you know, about once a quarter or every other quarter, specifically, we take tons of food to these different food pantries because we know there's a food shortage. And
Mm.
so whether I'm in Texas or whether we're in California, right, we also partner with the veterans and other groups, right? We literally load up an SUV with $700-800 worth of food and take it to just a local food pantry to help them, you know, to keep their food pantry loaded. Right? In some cases, to help them have food just to feed people that week, right? And then literally we'll interview the director of those food pantry or churches or a lot of them, and then allow them to give the URL and say, here's the great work we're doing. So then hopefully other people will go and donate, right? Reciprocity, right? And giving back is huge for us. A lot of folks don't take, a lot of businesses, you probably see this as well, especially large businesses, they don't take their social or their community social responsibility serious enough, right? We use all of the infrastructure built by the taxpayers' money, the community's money, right? To not then hire people from the community or to put that money back into the community, right, is an injustice to what I think, you know, businesses should be doing. And that
Mm.
just comes from the heart, right? That's just who I am. That's how I was raised. But it doesn't make sense, right, to use your roads, but then not, you know, give anything back to that community.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, so that's
You
a big thing
mentioned
for
that.
us.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're looking to scale the business, and where do you see the biggest opportunity for growth?
Well, I think my biggest opportunity for growth is on the coaching and on the brokerage side, right? There is lots of different opportunities and different prospects coming at us about that. People wanting to partner, actually offering, you know, money to build out some of these services even more. I've got a meeting, I think day after tomorrow, to talk a little bit about that. That one is, it's not even, so that's where I think the greatest opportunity is. I think, with tax, it's pretty simple. If they don't, hopefully they'll come up with a flat tax and they'll put us all out of business from a tax perspective, right? I'd be perfectly comfortable with that because that
Right.
means my taxes will be, fine, and the American public will be fine because we've got a flat tax on billionaires, right? So we're really bringing in the appropriate amount of revenue. I have no problem paying for that. That's been something that we talked about at the IRS for a long time, right? Clearly, that will put quite a few CPAs out of business, right? And accounting firms with flat tax. But I don't see as much growth in that area. I see it in brokerage, and I see it also in the counseling of executives and other leaders. And those will be the leaders that'll still be left, after they deplete their workforce, because, right, the strategy for most corporations is to go AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be BPI, but usually what that meant is, hey, I can reduce heads, right? If I've got 5 people doing a task today, and after we put in the appropriate process, it only takes one, then guess what? I can get rid of 4 people, right? I can move them. Me, I prefer to move them to another division or something, but that's not the way most corporations work, right? The biggest expense reduction is headcount. So, that'll continue to be a challenge. This is why I push running your own business and being an entrepreneur. But my growth, again, is going to be on the executive development and leadership development side of the house. Because that's an area where I think leaders are going to need more and more help to navigate this current
Mm.
environment. And then real estate is real estate. It is what it is. I think it's probably one of the best investments you can make, but I don't really see a lot of growth there anytime soon. But I don't have a
Yeah.
challenge scaling on that side of the house. So
And what growth channels have you used so up to date?
one more time. I'm sorry.
What channels are you using to facilitate this growth?
Social media primarily, right? It's all of it's going to be social media. We have a pretty good platform. We have good brand. we don't aggressively go after all of the potential prospects that are available. If you actually looked at my website, we offer a variety of other services in the area, like insurance, which falls under our financial arm. If you need to get, loans, we've got TMI, right, which is a business partner of ours. If you need, any type of training for kids that are considered to be at risk, right, we partner, with another legacy business that does that. So we have like what I would call like these offshoots, right? Literally, that we
Mm.
can offer and sell. And I think we could scale on those as well. We'll start to do that primarily because when we look at our AYG arm, right? This is something that will save a number of businesses tons of money, right, on the various insurances that they have today. Literally, we come in and say, employer, you're no longer going to have to pay anything on the employer side. Your employee is going to be able to keep the same insurance provider that he has, and he's going to pay the same rate or a little bit less. At the end of the day, though, the
Mhm.
employer will not. So I have a pipeline of HR executives, maybe about 150, right, that we can have this targeted conversation with that we haven't had because that's the scale part. Once I once we open it up, right, the same with TMI and with some of the other ones, then I'm going to have to start to hire people, right, to take on responsibility of the growth, which is the scale, and try to use AI as much as I possibly can. But at the end of the day, right, I'm going to need people for that, and that's the challenge. It's like I got to find good people. You want to keep them on board when you bring them on board. You need an array, right? What I mean by that is you need young, middle, and older people, right, to fit the dynamic for the marketplace. Marketplace is not just right one age group, and so you need input from all those various age groups. So yeah, the scaling part, we can do it. We're ready, right? We're in a position to start to aggressively go on the offense to bring on prospects, right, for a number of our services. But we have to have the people to take that on. And,
Sure.
we need to put
Sure.
together a plan for that and then be more targeted in that area.
Well, brilliant. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
Where can you learn more about your services and your business and reach out to you?
Sure. That'd be great.
And where can they find you? What's your website?
Oh, yeah.
And
You can find me at Premier Partners Consulting, right? You can find me on LinkedIn at premierpartnersconsulting.com. And you can find me as Premier Partners on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're on all the social media sites. Just type in Premier Partners Consulting and you'll get us.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Michael. Very interesting. If anybody would like to reach out to Michael or his team, please do so. And I wish you all the best.
Thanks, RD. Appreciate you. Hey, like I said, it's a real honor and a pleasure to address your podcast. And hopefully we'll do another one.